Sign up for WynnBET Sportsbook at WYNNBet.com today using promo code BlueWire to get up to $1,000 toward a risk-free sports bet. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at WynnBET.com. Must be 21 or older and present in the state where playthrough WynnBET is available. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700.
What is Crack-a-Lacka and Hardwood Knocks listeners? I am Dan Valley coming at you once more without my fantabulous co-host Adam Frommel. I am, however, pleased to be joined by Paul Garcia. He covers the Spurs for Project Spurs. He's also the host of the Spurs Cast. Follow him on Twitter at Paul Garcia NBA. As you might have guessed, we're going to be talking about the San Antonio Spurs. Truly a fascinating team heading into this year, given everything that happened over the offseason and also how they're tangentially, I guess you would put it, linked to the Ben Simmons sweepstakes in Philadelphia or soap opera in Philadelphia, whatever you're calling that these days. Our conversation was great and also highly efficient. Paul dropped like 50 points here on a perfect 14 of 14 shooting or something, 50 points on 12 shots, whatever you want to call it. So you're going to enjoy that, I am sure. Before we get started, just our usual housekeeping notes. Please, pretty please continue rating, reviewing, and subscribing to us wherever you get your podcasts. That helps us out a ton in the charts and moving forward. It also helps us, whether or not you use iTunes, if you go over to iTunes, search Hardwood Knocks, throw us that 5-star rating, write a review, include criticism if you must. That is totally fine. We'll take it to heart. Just throw us that 5-star rating. That also helps us out a crap ton in the charts as well. Finally, if you stumbled onto us for the first time, maybe by accident or because you're a diehard Spurs fan or because you're a religious follower of Paul Garcia's content, hello, welcome. Consider throwing us that permanent subscription. We cover the entire league at large, and we are pleasantly sub-mediocre. Follow us on Twitter as well, at Hardwood Knocks. You can also find us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com, search Hardwood Knocks. We will pop up. We are also on Instagram, at Hardwood_Knocks. Now that the housekeeping notes are out of the way, let's get into some deep San Antonio Spurs talk with Paul Garcia. Paul, thank you so much for coming back on the Hardwood Knocks podcast to talk some San Antonio Spurs with us. I keep a spreadsheet of the guests that I've had on and how many times they've been. This is your 4th appearance, and this is the 3rd time we've done the Spurs look ahead. So thank you for returning so often to talk about San Antonio basketball with us. First and foremost, though, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. You know, actually, I didn't realize this is the 4th time now. I thought it was like maybe like 2nd or 3rd, but yeah, I'm really glad. It's always a fun conversation to have as the season approaches.
The Spurs this year, I think, are still confusing, kind of like they were last year, but it does seem like what they did this offseason was cannonball more into a youth-leaning movement, which I think is something, you know, you always have the national analysts or just people removed from San Antonio who call for that, but it feels like the fans might actually be relieved that this is finally the direction that they're going in.
Yeah, no, for sure. You know, with the team, you know, letting DeMar DeRozan, Patty Mills, Rudy Gay all walk away in free agency, they have shifted to that youth movement. This is something that, like you said, the fans have wanted for a long time. You hear, you know, their complaints during the season of, you know, let Dejounte take all the pick and rolls, let Keldon do more on offense. You know, all these different complaints, and now all of a sudden, here we go. This is it. This team. This is the unit that Pop's throwing out there, and there's not many veterans left on this team, and so those young guys are going to be responsible. And so now when the fans get upset, it's going to have to be with these young players that are developing, you know, in their early 20s, and see, you know, they're gonna have to live with those mistakes and see as this team goes along.
Are they still sort of trying to straddle 2 timelines when you look at the McDermott contract, just having Pop there, and just, I mean, even the age of, you know, we can't call Dejounte Murray-Derrick White prospects anymore. Like they're on their 2nd contract. Like these are just really good players. So are they still sort of trying to straddle 2 timelines a little bit?
Yeah, they're kind of in both of those modes where you know, at best, you know, they're trying to get into that, you know, stay in that playoffs, that playing game realm, you know, maybe finishing toward the later part of the Western Conference. But at worst, you know, if things go south, well, then all of a sudden you got a top 5 lottery type team here, or a top 10 lottery team, if things don't go well. And yeah, so it's kind of like, you know, they're really just trying to see, you know, what can these young guys, Derrick White, Dejounte Murray, Keldon Johnson, these guys all, you know, pop and turn into, and then they have some veteran presence there, you know, guys like Doug McDermott, who they brought in some shooting, Bryn Forbes. So just kind of bringing in pieces around those guys to really let them try to flourish and see what can they turn into. Are these going to be real players down the road here that maybe turn into an all-star down the road, or not? You know, they'll get that chance this coming season.
Fun Bryn Forbes fact for our listeners, in case they didn't know, he led the NBA in points per shot last year. So talk about some microwave offense there. You sort of mentioned this already, is when you look at if the Spurs are rebuilding, retooling, planning for the future, whatever it is, I don't know that they have that obvious mystery box, star level, you want to call them prospect or young player. Who is most likely on this team to make that seismic leap where maybe we don't say that's a future all-star, but at least sort of gives their rebuild a direction, a starting point, a fulcrum, if you will?
I would say with just the opportunities they're going to get this season, it's going to be Dejounte Murray or Derrick White because they're both going to get those opportunities. They're going to play together, but then they're also going to get to, really be in charge of the offense a lot of the times. And if it's not one of those two players, then they have Keldon Johnson, Lonnie Walker IV, and also Devin Vassell. I really feel like Devin Vassell had a really strong summer league, but then now that he's back with the San Antonio team, just based on one preseason game against one game, he's got all those other guards and like perimeter players around him who get more opportunities before him. So maybe that's why I wouldn't say Devin as my safe answer. But again, I think Dejounte, Derrick White, and then maybe even Keldon are those three players. Like maybe one of them turns into something that an impactful player down the road.
From 10,000 miles out, I agree with you. I would give up some of my fingers, though, if we could see Devin Vassell just get a crack at more of that type of volume. But look, DeMar DeRozan's gone, even having Patty Mills gone. Are they just officially turning the keys over to Dejounte Murray on offense? And what do you think, what do you think he needs to improve upon most in that higher profile role? And he did quietly have, our listeners, he had a really good year last season. Defense was still excellent, and I thought he showed progress on offense where, no, he's not this knockdown jump shooter, but he seems willing to take them, and I trust him. He seems less predictable with the ball in his hands in the half court. I am curious to see, though, just what that looks like in a higher profile role.
Yeah, I think it's going to really be on him to see, what does he turn into on offense, especially the scoring wise. We know he still has that mid-range jumper that he likes to go to. He was more aggressive. And again, it's just one preseason game. But that first preseason game, he was really good about attacking and really settling in the third quarter. He kind of took over in that third quarter and he ended up with 17 points in the night, being one of the leading scorers for the team. And again, it all came quickly there in the third quarter. We also know that he has that potential to basically like put up stats. He had multiple triple doubles last year. He's really gone on the defensive board and ending possessions for the defense, and like you mentioned, setting up teammates, and also just his individual defense is really good too. So I really feel like, yes, let's see exactly now with basically like the offense in his hands to see how does he handle that with driving, with getting the scoring, with DeRozan gone, and especially if Derrick White doesn't have it going for a night.
I automatically think this is the season we're going to get to see more of Murray and Derrick White play together. But then I'm like, okay, well, DeRozan and Patty Mills are gone. So is there going to be even more of an effort to stagger them, or do we finally get to see what these two might be able to do together?
So I think that Coach Pop's first preseason game showing how he used both players was really interesting. So he started both of them for a few minutes, the first 6 minutes, like the Spurs normally do with their starters. And then all of a sudden he took out Dejounte pretty early, and then he let Derrick White stay with the second unit. Then when Derrick White needed a break, he brought Dejounte back in. So we did see the initial staggering. That could be because Tre Jones is out right now. He's out with a left ankle sprain to start the preseason. But again, like if he doesn't trust, Coach Pop doesn't trust Tre Jones, and and they don't really have a backup point guard. Maybe they don't want to give the ball to Josh Primo just yet. Well, then I could see him continue that staggering route, but they'll still get those first 6 minutes of the first quarter and third quarter together, Dejounte and Derrick White.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I look at this roster and I'm wondering, is the lack of, I think you could say playmaking in general or just table setters like their biggest weakness right now, and you already kind of stepped on it. This doubles as is Tre Jones when he's healthy, is he going to get minutes, because he had a hell of a summer league himself.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Again, we'll see. I mean, right now he is hurt. I know that even for their second preseason game against Detroit, he's on the injured list. He's listed as doubtful, but we will see, because I mean he kind of like threw a wrench in the rotations because of how well he played at summer league. If he's able to put up those kind of numbers and just that kind of composure at summer league, they're hoping that he can take this into the season and become that backup point guard now that Patty Mills is officially gone. I know he plays a different role than Patty, but yeah, like if Tre's not ready though, and Coach Pop doesn't see him ready to have an increased workload, then I think that you could see more of the staggering between Dejounte and Derrick White.
The hopping around on the outline I sent you here, because you mentioned Josh Primo already. Based off what we saw at the draft combine and then one preseason game did not watch the game. I watched just the Josh Primo highlights. There is so much that it seems like he can do with the ball in his hands. And so I'm wondering if, one, what intrigues you most about his game? And two, I guess, is he sort of the barometer for how committed they are to this youth movement? Because I think in a normal year, he really wouldn't get that much minutes with the regular club.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I would say honestly, like in terms of shot creativity and potential with off the dribble kind of shots, he's already like not in terms of like accuracy. He's not there yet, but he's going to be down the road one of the one of the top players on this team already who can make difficult shots, who has that potential to really just throw in crossovers into step back jumpers and things like that, and just shooting naturally off pick and rolls. He showed that already in this first preseason game. He showed some of that as well in the summer league. So yeah, I think that he's kind of throwing the coaching staff off a little bit here, where they didn't expect him to play so well so early on, especially, again, it's just one preseason game, but just the way he played, he's going to have to make them start questioning, do we send him down to Austin, which should be the normal route for a Spurs rookie. But then also, if this team just isn't very good, where they really struggle, maybe because just looking at their schedule, I mean, on paper, you might expect them to go maybe like 2-12 at one point, or 4-14 really early on if things don't go well. If that does happen, why not just go into full rebuild mode and let Primo start getting real NBA minutes against, quality opponents, rather than sending him to the G League route if the team, again, that's only in the case that the team isn't struggling. But again, if he plays like this throughout the preseason, where he's showing some of these impactful performances, well, then I really think that it's going to really make the coaching staff really question, do we send him to the traditional rookie route, or do they start giving him some minutes now?
And I was also wondering if maybe the coaching staff would be open to being, let's say, more experimental, not because of the direction the Spurs are headed in, but just, when you look at the half court offense without DeMar DeRozan last year, like the numbers on that are disgusting. Like they were bad. And so I don't know that there's a clear cut answer. And my initial thought was like, maybe just try, maybe see what's happening with Tre Jones or just to see if it helps at all, because you still need that. Yeah, you have Murray, you have White, but I guess unless you're expecting like a Lonnie Walker or a Keldon Johnson or a Devin Vassell to pop or do a lot more with the ball in their hands, depending on which player you're talking about, it feels like this team should be built to get weird, or at least really indulge self-discovery no matter what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think they know that's going to probably be one of their weaknesses, is half court offense, creating when a defense really locks them down. So I think that's why they've shifted their focus this coming into training camp. Is they've been talking about, Coach Pop says, as the players say, they just really want to play fast, use their speed and athleticism to their advantage. So you saw that in their pace. They were really pushing the ball up the floor after every possession, and then also they're going to really rely on something that they talked about last night, is they're going to rely on their defense to really create offense for them, and they need that. They basically need to get stops and create havoc on the defensive end, so that they can get out in the open court and use a lot of these young athletes out there in the open court. Because yes, once a team gets into their half court offense, and their half court defense, and really buckles down on San Antonio, you do see where they did struggle. Even though the Jazz were missing multiple core players in this preseason game, you saw that when it really got to a more half court oriented game with like 14 seconds left on the shot clock, San Antonio did struggle. Where they were trying to run their sets and they really weren't going anywhere. And so I think again that's where they're going to really miss DeRozan, and that's why they got to continue to push the pace and try to avoid letting a defense get set up like how they want to.
It's so surreal to hear Pop talking about that. I know the Spurs in more recent years, like they've had certain lineups that really just get after it up and down the floor, but they've always just been built on such like this methodical, deliberate approach. And there's just something surreal about going into the preseason, hearing Pop talk about like their identity needs to be like this frenetic pace. It's just, I don't know. It feels, it's kind of awesome, but it's like an outer body experience for me looking so far outside the picture.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned experimental, and that's kind of what it feels like already. I mean, I can't, like, I've talked about this on a few podcasts where I just don't feel like Pop's ever been in this situation where, the expectations aren't championship or bust. So, and then it's also where, there's just really not a lot of barometers for this team to have to set. So you see him being more experimental, like you said, on offense, wanting to go fast. And then you even saw this in the one preseason game. He's already experimenting like crazy, where he's already like throwing in half court traps and stuff. Like, I think he just likes the fact that like, there's not like a go-to player on this team on offense, but then on defense, he can basically, because all these players are so switchy and they're all long and athletic, he can basically, have different schemes, whether it's a zone for possession or throwing in a half court trap, or just different things with their energy and just taking a little bit more risk and gambles and just seeing what, this team turns into. I think that even for Pop, he's very excited just looking at his mood and his tone coming into this season.
That's awesome, because I think when you just look at his age, there's either two ways it could go. This team could frustrate the hell out of him, or he could just go full mad scientist and lean into it. And so I'm just really hoping it's the latter.
Yeah. So again, we'll see though if they end up like 2-12. That could change.
Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friend's login for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes, and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part? there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package.
Slow is just right if you're on vacation, a sloth, or describing QuickBooks. More like slow books. It sucks you in and slows you down with manual processes, integration difficulties, and glitchy delays that leave you scrambling for the numbers you need. Now is the time to make the switch to NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 financial system, because NetSuite gives you visibility and control of your financials, inventory, HR, e-commerce, and more. It's everything you need to grow, all in one place. With NetSuite, you can automate your processes and close your books in no time, no matter how big your business grows. Failing to switch to NetSuite will leave you stuck trying to make sense of your books while your competitors sprint ahead. 93% of surveyed businesses increased visibility and control since switching to NetSuite. And right now, special financing is back. NetSuite is offering a one-of-a-kind financial program only for those ready to switch today. Head to netsuite.com/bluewire right now. Get special financing at netsuite.com/bluewire. One more time, netsuite.com/bluewire.
I went back and watched a lot of Keldon Johnson towards the end of last season because I think like he was just one of the players that I feel like, not that I passed judgment on too soon, but you think that you know what he was, and people have just described, like he seemed to thrive on this chaotic energy. Towards the end of the season, it felt like there was just a little bit more finesse or change in direction to his game offensively. And I'm just wondering, like, what do you view as the best version of Keldon Johnson offensively, or maybe even what type of opportunity do you think he's going to get on this specific roster construction offensively? Is there a more dynamic player long-term than we saw last season on that side of the floor?
Yeah, I think we're going to see exactly, what can he turn into, especially in the half court, because that's where he kind of struggles. We saw that if you watch tape from last year, you'll see that he was very good about being aggressive, getting to the free throw line, getting to the paint, and scoring early on from like December to about February. But then by like February, teams kind of figured him out. They know that all he wants to do is score inside, so they purposely started backing away off the 3-point line. And then of course he struggled a little bit because people, defenders would just leave him wide open and they congest the lane for him. So he's definitely said that he's wanted to work on his shot. His stroke looks a little bit different right now in preseason. It's a little bit quicker. He wasn't shy about taking them. He didn't make any last night in his first preseason game. But one thing that was interesting to watch that you see from the coaching staff is that he was getting a chance to run multiple pick and rolls where if Keldon brings the ball down, he right away calls for a screen for Jakob Poeltl to set a screen or Doug McDermott to set a screen for him. And so you got to see more opportunity to create now, not just Derek and Dejounte, but now Keldon is also getting that opportunity. So again, I don't know exactly how far he's going to go in that being an offensive player in the half court. But again, I think that's good to see that the coaching staff wants to see how much can he develop into that type of role.
I think it'll definitely help him, even if his jumper's not working, that he's just seemed, again, as the year went on, more comfortable like spinning or changing directions a little bit as he got closer to the basket, even if the end result wasn't always great. But I feel like if you want him to be in that sort of pick and roll capacity in the half court, like there's going to need to be some progress, whether it's a pull-up jumper or at least like where defenses are worried about him stepping into, even if it takes forever for him to uncork a three, or even just as a spot-up shooter, improving his percentages on those looks.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the big one right now that I'm watching is the spot-up shooting. How is he going to be when he's left wide open? And so again, we'll kind of see what happens there.
I have no idea what to make of Lonnie Walker. I just don't, like, we're 3 years into his career, and I'm not sure. We've seen like the highs, we've seen the lows, we've seen the middles. His career has been so uneven. What is the biggest aspect of his game that he needs to work on to ensure that he's a part of this team long-term? He is extension eligible. Yeah. I personally would be a little bit surprised if he ended up getting one, which is why I'm framing the question that way.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think that the biggest thing that he needs to work on, and I think that's been the same case for Lonnie, is consistency. I mean, he has these crazy nights where he put up 22, 25 points and just look like, he can drive on a defense in the pick and roll. He can go, just go coast to coast on a team. He can shoot, he can make threes, whether it's off the dribble or spot up action. But then, and some nights you say, okay, well, it's maybe because DeRozan was out or somebody was out of the rotation, so he got more opportunity. But then there's games where like DeRozan was out or somebody was hurt, and all of a sudden he got to start, and he still only put up maybe like 6 points in the game. And so again, it's just that consistency where he's never been consistent. Again, last night in this first preseason game, he looked really good. He took like a crossover and then just made a three. He was driving in and kicking to teammates. Defensively, he was really active, doing a great job of moving his feet and getting in front of the opponents. But again, is this going to carry up into the second game and then the third game? And that's kind of been the question with Lonnie, is that he's had these signs before of being this, this player at another level, but he never consistently brings forth those performances. And so, yeah, you're right. With that extension coming up on the 18th of October, which is 13 days away from you and I recording this, I don't see San Antonio giving him that extension. But again, if he has two or three more impactful preseason games, and it looks like this is going to be a consistent Lonnie Walker, then maybe who knows what happens.
I'm assuming the opportunity will be there at least early in the regular season for him, because he's, you mentioned some of the shots he's hitting. Like, there's no other guy on the team that's comfortable hitting the types of shots. Mm-hmm. And like, that's what you would love to see that out of a Murray or a Johnson. Maybe White comes closest, or Josh Primo. But like, the fact that we're going that deep now into it, like he is like, there's no one else on this team to me that's comfortable hitting in theory the shots that he can take and make.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, just saying those names, I think after Lonnie, it's probably Primo who's most natural to be able to kind of cross
like 8
over.
Years old.
Yeah, exactly. So Lonnie has that potential, but again, we'll kind of see, how much he's able to keep that consistent. And I think that one thing you saw with him as well is, when he came on off the bench, he's, Pop likes to use him in that 6-man type of role. He started doing that last year. Is that he's actually getting a lot of opportunity as well. It was really cool to see at the end of the first quarter, with like 20 seconds timing down, they let Lonnie run the final pick and roll of a possession, and so he ran something with Jakob, and so again, he's going to get those opportunities just like Keldon, just like Murray, and just like White, where we're going to see, what kind of player can you turn into, especially with, no DeRozan there anymore to be in the way.
Devin Vassell, every team has a player that I would follow to hell and back, and I think Devin Vassell is mine for the Spurs. It could be Dejounte Murray. It's a toss-up between those two. He's going to be really good. I know his three ball dropped off like towards the tail end of last year. He's got, just as a 3-and-D guy, he's going to be spectacular. Is that what he is, or do you see more elements to his game that he could be this more, expansive player?
I think we're going to see more elements to his game, and we saw that. It's going to be slowly, but there's going to be more that comes with Devin Vassell in the years to come. And we saw that initially at Summer League this past summer, where they wanted him to purposely run more pick and roll, run more one-on-one sets, and just see what the assistant coach at the time, Mitch Johnson, basically said how he performs in Summer League is going to dictate what kind of role he gets here with the San Antonio team down the line. And so he was really impressive in Summer League. Where he was running a lot of pick and roll when defenses would go on him on screens. He was getting to his spot there in the mid range, and that was a pretty good shot for him. He saw that they learned how to switch it on him. They learned how to switch over the screens. They learned how to trap him at times, and he did struggle with that. But then he said he wanted to be in those opportunities to learn, exactly how to adjust to the defense. And then, like I said earlier, going into this preseason game, he didn't get that opportunity with all those different ball handlers on the floor. But then all of a sudden, the third quarter comes, and he just has a really impactful quarter where he finally got to run pick and roll, and he got a screen, and he actually took it down for a dunk. He had a mid-range jumper. He had a 3 go down. So he had a pretty good game as well. And of course, defensively, it's always going to be there for him. He's really good at anticipation. He's got long arms. I remember Zach Lowe recently wrote a piece last week on Devin, and he just talked about how Devin basically like was able to hold Tre Young for possession pretty well, that not a lot of defenders are able to do at the NBA level. So I think defensively, it's always going to be there for him. We're going to see now how much can he expand on offense.
If he winds up running multiple pick and rolls per game, I'm going to do I'm going to riot in celebration, because I would just love to see it.
I think he's going to get the chance. Yeah.
So how are they going to use Thaddeus Young on this team? Like, is he going to primarily play backup 5? Will he play a bunch with Jakob Poeltl? I think he was, first of all, that deal for DeMar DeRozan, they killed it. And so he's definitely someone who could help this team. I'm just curious as to how they're actually going to deploy him.
Yeah, so here in San Antonio, we're still watching that date, October 18th, because that's the day that the Spurs, 13 days now, the Spurs need to trim their roster down. They have 17 guaranteed players, and 2 players need to get waived or traded by then. So Thaddeus Young is one of the players we're keeping an eye on, whether he gets traded. We don't think he'll get waived just because of the value he brings to the team. And then also Al-Farouq is another player. So in terms of Thaddeus, it was interesting already. First preseason game, he got 0 minutes. He and Aminu didn't play at all. Pop didn't use them. Now, if he stays on the team past the 18th of October, I do think that he will have a role here because San Antonio needs to keep his trade value high, so they have to keep playing him. And so, he could either fit in off the bench, I think, at the 4 or the backup 5. But, you have Drew Eubanks playing well there. You have Jock Landale, that new center that they brought in, playing well there as well. And then even at the 4, actually, Devin got those minutes at the 4 last night. I think that Pop wants to continue. Yeah, Devin got the 4, the backup 4 minutes. So really, Pop wants to continue with a lot of wings out there. So I don't know, where he's going to fit in on the roster, but I think that for sure he's going to have to play if he stays past the 18th of October because they need to keep his trade value high. And I know that they want to try to get some assets for him. Considering he and Aminu are the two veterans who don't really fit on this team right now.
Do you think there's a chance that they waive Aminu before the start of the season?
Yeah, with Aminu, I think there's a chance. Maybe they look for a buyout. So he's got $10 million coming back, or he's got $10 million that he's owed. So maybe like an $8 million buyout, something like that. That way he can maybe make it up with the team on a veteran minimum. So I think Aminu, there's a very high chance he gets a buyout. There's a few teams I already looked at that have trade exceptions that could absorb Aminu or Young. But again, it's really tough to see who's going to get moved. But there has to be a move here within the next 13 days.
And I look at their front court rotation, specifically the 4-5, and maybe some of this is organically solved because Zach Collins, we don't even know when he's going to play, it sounds like. If they decide to waive Aminu, they could find a trade for Thad. But you're talking about those 3 guys. There's Keldon Johnson. You mentioned Devin Vassell has spent some time at the 4.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine you at least want to, maybe they're interchangeable, but Doug McDermott should probably factor into there a little bit. And so I'm just curious as to how you see sort of the 4-5 rotations shaking out for San Antonio once this season starts.
Okay, so I had coming into the season, I had I had McDermott probably starting, and then Lucas Samanic, who doesn't get a lot of minutes, playing the backup 4, or Thaddeus Young if Young's still on the team. But basically, looking at what Coach Bob did in his first preseason game, he had McDermott starting at the 4, and then now that he wants to keep it more wing oriented on the front court, he actually had Devin at the 4, so that throws off the minutes for everybody. Lucas kind of got buried even further now down in the. Yeah, Keita Job was playing before Lucas Samanic, and so at one point I was watching the game, and when Pop wasn't bringing in Luka, I was like, is Luka part of this? Maybe there's a trade with Thaddeus Young and Aminu going somewhere. Maybe Luka's like that young trade chip to throw in for a team. But then he eventually got some time. But I just feel like Luka has never had a chance, and he's just kind of been in Austin these last 2 years. And again, looking at the rotation from the first preseason game, it doesn't look like he's in the rotation again to start. But that's kind of my thoughts on where I see the 4 going.
So what's the starting lineup do you think actually going to wind up looking like then?
I think the one that we saw yesterday, where it's going to be Derek, Dejounte, Keldon, Doug McDermott, and Jakob Poeltl. Okay.
So it sounds like you don't expect Thaddeus Young to be on this team by the end of the season.
No, I do not. And just listening to his comments and also Amino's, they're basically giving those, veteran quotes of as long as we're for the time that we're here kind of stuff, we're going to be professional. We're going to be, mentors. They're giving those kind of quotes in interviews. So it almost sounds like their answers, they know they're not going to probably be here long-term for up until the end of the season.
I don't even need to ask you then who's the player most likely to get traded because it's him. This was low-hanging fruit. That does feel like something, I know you mentioned maybe before the start of the season. Would it almost be surprising if they found a deal before then? It feels like he might be one of the guys that just moves December 15th, I think it is, when every team is just going to, more players on their roster can be dealt. Right now it just gets a little bit tough for some of the teams to do anything given how many players are ineligible to be moved.
Yeah, no, you're right. I could very well see him going past October 18th up until maybe that December 15th deadline where they have, more teams to trade with, because right now, like I said, there's only a few teams that have a trade exception large enough to absorb Thaddeus Young. And I don't even know if those teams would want Thaddeus Young. And again, it's only a certain amount of teams because they have to be more select those contenders or those playoff level teams. So there's not a lot of teams to work with right now. But yeah, I don't, it wouldn't surprise me if he's still on the team past the 18th of October, but it would very much surprise me if he's still here by February 10th, which is the trade deadline.
I did not, for some reason, send you anything about this when I was sending you an outline, so you can feel free to punt on it. But do you actually view San Antonio as a dark horse Ben Simmons suitor? And do you even like the idea of Ben Simmons in San Antonio?
Yeah, no, I do. Every time that there's a rumor about the Spurs, inquiring about him, we always report on it over on our website and also on our podcast, the Spurs Cast. And so, yeah, I really think that yes, San Antonio is going to continue to stay engaged. I think with Philly, because for them, Simmons I think would be a good option for San Antonio because again, Murray, White, Devin Vassell, these players they could have that potential down the road, but we don't know for sure. Whereas Ben Simmons, you're getting an all NBA level player, you're getting an all-star right now, and then you get him in San Antonio, and then you start building a team around him. Especially coming into the next season as being one of the few teams that actually has a good amount of cap space, so you can kind of restructure your roster to fit around Ben Simmons and kind of work with his strengths and weaknesses. So I really feel like, yes, as long as the price, whatever the trade package comes down from what Philly would accept right now, I think that, yes, San Antonio is going to continue to call and kind of stay engaged in those conversations until he eventually gets moved. Because I really feel like, yes, if he's there for the right trade package that San Antonio is comfortable with, I think that, yes, they would make that move and to bring in Ben Simmons.
And I think he has, regardless of what people think of Ben Simmons now, he has the better chance of being a North Star for your rebuild than either a Murray or a Derrick White or a Johnson or Vassell at this point.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, just because we know what he is, you know what he is already as a player, the level he can get to, and then I think that from there you can really kind of do what he's been saying, through his in these reports, is that he wants a team built around him, and I think that the Spurs would be able to do that, where they can start moving maybe some of these young players to get in, whether it's shooting around him or whatever different players that they feel would best work with Simmons. And again, now all of a sudden you have your all-star, your all-NBA level player for the next 4 years if you're San Antonio.
They could offer a bunch of different packages. What's interesting about there is they could be one of the teams where you need that third or fourth team if Philly's really just dead set on getting a star back for Ben Simmons. But they can offer, to me, the best of both worlds. When you look at having a Murray and a White to include, then someone like a Devin Vassell who can already play now but is a prospect, and then picks, they can offer the best of both worlds. No, they can't offer you an incumbent star. But if you're going to accept like the tier less, or if you're going to settle at any point, if you're Philly, I think San Antonio's package probably intrigues me most. Unless maybe if Sacramento puts like Tyrese Halliburton on the table, which it doesn't sound like they're going to do.
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect word. You just said, they're settle. I think that if Philly ever gets to the point where they're willing to settle on what they're asking for Simmons, I think that San Antonio is one of those perfect trade partners for them, where of the young players, they have some picks to send as well, and it would just be, again, on Philly bringing their trade package, what they're asking for down.
This question is always somewhat matchup dependent, but what do you think should be their go-to crunch time lineup this season?
Oh, okay, that's an interesting question. I think let me just think here. So I would say Murray, Derrick White, Lonnie. Let's see here. Maybe McDermott. Someone at the 4. Maybe McDermott or Vassell, and then for a big. I don't know if I want to necessarily go with Jakob, but if Thaddeus Young's on the team, maybe him or maybe Jakob. Just again, I would want over. I know I didn't include Keldon in there, just because when it comes to crunch time, you want shooting in there, shooting that you trust more so. And I know Murray's not a knockdown shooter, but at least you trust his playmaking a little bit more. Whereas when Keldon got stuck in those crunch time situations last year, he really struggled, and he wasn't in a lot of those rotations. And so I think that those players can all kind of shoot, and they can kind of play make for themselves and for others.
You going through all those names just made me realize how many options that they just have to sort of futz and fiddle with and their lineup. And it also makes me curious as to, you mentioned Jock Landale, and then you have Drew Eubanks plus Pirtle. I kind of thought this team might be built to go a little bit smaller at points, where Thaddeus Young would play a lot of 5 if he's still there, or even if you get rid of him, maybe you just go nuclear and try some smaller lineups there. But do you think that they're that interested in, obviously we know what Jakob Pirtle can do as a rim protector. Mm-hmm. They also Zach Collins is on this roster too. So do you think that they are a team that could play smaller for stretches, or is that their center rotation, they're going to play more true bigs for most of the time?
No, they're going to stick to, I think, just two traditional centers. I think it's always going to be Jakob starting, and then there's going to be that battle between Eubanks and Landale. Last year there was that battle between Eubanks and Gorgie Jank, when now it's Landale and Eubanks. And Zach Collins will throw a wrench in here in this situation, because Coach Pop just said recently that they're expecting him back after Christmas time, that he could be returning to the floor by like January. So they'll get a few months with Zach Collins as well to compete there for some minutes. But yeah, I think that based on the rotations, they're going to try to keep it more so to just keeping 1-5 and a lot more wing and guard players from the other 4 positions.
You're Greg Popovich in this scenario, and you're tasked with throwing out a quirky, unconventional, weirdo lineup that you have no idea how it's going to fare, but we just need to see it to find out what will happen. Which 5 guys are you rolling with?
I'm going to go all wings, just like a lot of wings. So I would go with Dejounte, Derrick White, Lonnie Walker, Devin Vassell, and then I don't know who that other one. Maybe even starting Josh Primo in that lineup just to have a little bit more fun. Oh, Keldon, I forgot Keldon. So yeah, so basically putting like Vassell at the 5, and then 4 is like Keldon. Then you got Lonnie, and then you still got Murray, and just a bunch of wings, a lot of speed. They have some shooting in that lineup, and just kind of saying go outpace the teams. And that's something I've tried to do before on NBA 2K with those kind of lineups.
Mine was along the similar lines. I need to see Murray, White, Primo, Vassell, and Keldon Johnson. Just give me those 5 and see what would happen. I'm with you though. Like, they're built to have just play all wings, just for a few possessions each game. I need to see it.
Yeah, so that would be intense.
Their current win total over under as we record this is set at 29.5. There are curveballs that can go into that, obviously. It seems like what's baked in is they could pivot really into a rebuild and trade not only Thaddeus Young, but they look at trading someone else. What's your feeling on the over under there, and where do you sort of see them stacking up in the larger picture of the Western Conference?
Okay, so I have unfortunately I have two answers here because like I have watching the preseason, then I have now post watching the preseason game, at least one game. So on paper, I kind of went through their schedule and I got them to like 26 wins, but I would just go safely say yes, I'm over at the 30. I would just say over just because of the Spurs. Teams are going to deal with like injuries and all these different situations, so I really feel like they could get to at least over 30. Now, as far as where they stack in the West, I do also see them outside of the playing game originally coming in. But based on again, it's one preseason game, so I don't want to put too much emphasis on it. But if they can really show that they're a top 10 level defense, and I think that there's a little bit of potential there with the team that they're bringing back, with losing a lot of their weaknesses, like with having DeMar DeRozan and Patty Mills, some of those other players that weren't as strong defensively. If they can get to becoming a top 10 defense, I really feel like now we're talking maybe playing games back, or maybe even playing game. I would say is right now the safest answer, and just wins. That's going to be at worst maybe like a 30-35 win team if you can become like a top 10 defense. So again, it kind of matters on how good can they be defensively, because right now again it was one game, but they have the pieces there to be a really good defense.
Yeah, they look like they could be super disruptive on the defensive end. Is there a chance, like let's say they're just better than expected to start the year? I would never view them as buyers, but like, is there a chance that then you just don't move Thaddeus? Like, what if you're just so good and you are in the play-in conversation? Let's say they're eighth, like heading into the trade deadline. Do you just keep Thaddeus Young at that point and be like, hey, like we're here already. We're not gonna how quickly are we gonna be able to bottom out without him?
Because Coach Pop is still in charge of the team, coaching the team, they would keep Thaddeus Young in that circumstance. Yeah, and that's the one thing about that. He said, taking away from some of the younger players is that as soon as they start winning games, and he's on the court, impactful, Pop is not going to let him go. He's not going to let him just get traded just for a pick down the road or something like that. He's going to want to keep him and staying as competitive as they can. So again, if they're in that ballpark of being within that playing game range, then yeah, I think that if Thaddeus Young was part of the rotation, they're not going to let him go.
Is there a chance that they could go in the opposite direction beyond Thaddeus Young? Because if you take Thaddeus Young off this team, I still don't view it as anything close to one of the three worst teams in the NBA, 3 or even 5. And if you are going to commit to the rebuild, you want to give yourself the best chance at like the highest lottery odds. At the same time, I don't think you look at this roster and say, aside from Thaddeus Young, well, you could look at moving this guy. But is there a chance that they would visit that end of the spectrum where they'd be willing to entertain offers on a Murray or a White in the middle, maybe a Lonnie Walker or even a Doug McDermott if they're really trying to go whole hog into this rebuild?
No, I don't think they would start moving those players unless you were getting somebody like like Ben Simmons, like we discussed earlier, just because it's an all-star. Unless you're getting an all-star player, then no, I don't think they would. Even if things went south for this team, that's all I see what they would do is like players like McDermott or just like some of the Murray, they would maybe start giving those minutes like Josh Primo to younger players like Tre Jones, maybe get some Lucas Samanic, maybe get some. So again, if things went south, I could just see them basically like kind of limiting the core players minutes and kind of giving the young players some minutes. But again, I don't. Unless it's like an all-star player that they're getting back that's a very impactful player, I can't see them moving some of these young core pieces like Murray-Derrick White or Lonnie Walker, those kind of players.
I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but how do you? Which 2 players do you think end up? I think it's 2 players they need to get rid of before opening night.
They have to get rid of by 2 players. I would just say right now the safest answer is to say Aminu and Thaddeus Young, just because they're the 2 veterans. They don't really fit with this team. But if they can't find takers, well then from there, let's just say they both stay on the team past the 18th of October. Then I would say the next realm would be the guys on shorter contracts, so maybe like a Keita Bates job. And I don't even know who the second player would be, because Drew Eubanks played really well, and I don't think they want to move him from this team.
Yeah, I mean, to get rid of, they just have so many players that I think you would want to keep on the roster. So I would be shocked. Wow, I can't. You would definitely be floored if they negotiated a buyout with Thaddeus Young, right? If someone ends up getting Thaddeus Young for free, that doesn't, it doesn't mean they lost the DeMar DeRozan deal. But like that, Thaddeus Young was like the second best player on the Bulls last year.
Yeah, no, I can't see a buyout with him. They would try to keep him up until that February 10th trade deadline and try to get something for him. I remember when he first got traded to San Antonio, Zach Lowe on his podcast was kind of just entertaining the idea of getting back a first round pick. And so I think that if you can get either a young player and a veteran just to make the salaries work, or getting back maybe a first or at least 2 seconds, just like that down the road, then I think you have to hold on to him until February 10th.
We covered a lot in an efficient amount of time for this podcast specifically. I tend to be very verbose and long. Is there anything or anyone about this roster that I did not ask about that you think needs to be covered?
No, I'm just honestly like, I know it's one preseason game, but man, it's like, you just got to really wait and see, what this team turns into. Cause I'm very interested to see what they become, because again, it was one preseason game. They looked really good. They won by 26 points, but that defense, just the communication, the moving around, the pop throwing weird traps already in a preseason game, and just the high level of energy and the pace. It's interesting because this is something we haven't seen from a San Antonio team. Me, that I've been covering them for 10 years now, I've never seen this kind of a team. And so just to see a bunch of young athletic wing players who want to use speed and just just a lot of energy and high potential. I do want to see what they turn into. Maybe it is a bad year and they end up being a top 10 lottery team like they're supposed to be according to Vegas, or who knows, maybe they surprise people and they end up becoming a top 10 defense, and that carries them, even though they will have their offensive struggles, and into becoming, one of those teams who's fighting for a play-in seed.
Do you think they'll be they were 13th outside of garbage time in points allowed per possession last year. Mm-hmm. Do you think they'll be better than 13th this year? The talent's there, but then they're also so young. It's like, I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, that's why it's hard to say. I want to say yes, because again, they lost some of their weaker defenders in DeRozan and Patty Mills, and now they've added some better defenders. Like, when you're just giving not really adding defenders, but just having more players who are going to be better about communicating and moving around the floor, and just having more high level communication. I want to say yes, that potential is there, but again, we'll kind of have to wait and see right now.
I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say that they're better than 19th in turnovers forced, because if they're going to run traps like that all year, and that's never been like, I know the Spurs have had great defensive teams, but when's the last time they ranked like super high in forcing opponent turnovers? They're all about like not fouling or being like super fundamental. Yeah. This feels like a team that's just going to, maybe they'll foul a ton, but it feels like they're going to force a crap ton of turnovers as well.
Yeah, no, I think so. And again, like you kind of saw it in that first preseason game where, Pop's letting Dejounte Murray trying to go in for those steals. Even last year, Devin Vassell was given that freedom to kind of anticipate and try to go for some incoming passes, even if he misses assignments at times. And, he was still able to get his minutes and log playing time. So I feel like, yes, they're going to take a lot more risks than a normal Spurs team would do. And so we'll see how that pays off. And then, of course, they still got Jakob Poeltl back there at the 5 near the paint to help, command the paint area.
Who was statistically like one of the most effective rim protectors, if not the most effective rim protectors in the league last year.
Yeah, he had a really good season last year.
And so last year, the Spurs were 19th in opponent turnover percentage, and they were in the bottom 5 in the 2 previous years before that. So I think it's pretty safe to say they're going to blow that out of the water. Paul, this was great as always. Are you able to tell our listeners where they can follow you on social media and also where they can find your work?
Sure. On Twitter, I usually I'm on Twitter a lot, so you can follow me at Paul Garcia NBA. I write for ProjectSpurs.com, AnalyzingTheLeague.com, and then you can listen to me on the Spurscast weekly.
You do a lot. You do it extremely well. I appreciate these chats as always. It's always fun to pick your brain about the Spurs, and thank you so much for your time. And I think, as you know by now, in the future, I will be coming to call again.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Sign up for WynnBET Sportsbook at WYNNBet.com today using promo code BlueWire to get up to $1,000 toward a risk-free sports bet. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at WynnBET.com. Must be 21 or older and present in the state where playthrough WynnBET is available. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700.